Hello, and welcome to Insights in Action with Orange 142, where we interview agency leaders and business owners to uncover the journeys, strategies, and insights that drive their success. At Orange 142, we're all about transforming brand stories into impactful digital experiences through innovative media and marketing solutions. And today I'm very lucky to be joined by Kelsey of Riester. How's it going, Kelsey?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And Kelsey, just to start this off, I'd love to learn little bit more about your background and a little bit more about Reister.
Yeah, I actually went to Arizona State University to get a digital art degree back in the day when I went. That was a new kind of realm to explore. So I went there and I did video editing, website development, all these new technologies that were coming through the pipeline with an art twist. As a kid, I'd always had a little interest in advertising, and I had remembered this ad, particularly when I was a kid in around the Phoenix area. It was about an anti-tobacco campaign, and it was tumor causing, teeth staining, smelly puking habit. And it always like really stuck with me. And it was, among other things, like a staple of my interest in advertising. And so after I graduated, I went to a couple different jobs, and then I ended up interviewing at a place called Riester, who had actually created that campaign. It
Oh,
was, yeah, it was a really fun thing. And that was about 12 years ago now. So I've been with Riester since then. The Riester agency has been around for around 35 years.
wow.
They've been around the block and they've been doing the digital stuff for about 15 years, I believe. And I've been there for 12.
Wow, that's really interesting. So that's a pretty powerful moment, I think, to have this ad that stuck with you. And not just that, it's like you ended up working at the agency that created the ad. But what was it about those early moments that stuck with you and still influences how you think about campaigns today?
I think the really interesting thing about that was I actually wasn't really into that whole smoking scenes, but and maybe possibly because of ad campaigns like that, and obviously Dare was around and all of that, and it was really powerful to me how much influence and positive change you can have not only on youth but on people. And obviously with advertising and marketing that could go both ways, but it depends on how you want to use the tool. So I had just had an interest in really making a mark on the world and trying to make it a better place with advertising and just marketing products that would really help people.
That's awesome. Now, a little bit to dive in a little bit on that, you're passionate about activism-based projects, like your current work for a Holocaust museum. What's your creative process when telling stories that require deep sensitivity and impact?
Well, it's interesting. So when I had first started getting into the advertising world and the website development world, I had a really siloed vision of it. I wasn't really involved with the entire process that it takes to build websites. I was just given something and I would deliver that. But now, as I've gotten through the different years of advertising, it gets a little bit more involved in depth with the research. And so a lot of the times what we do is we'll go and talk to the client. Obviously, we have an understanding of the history or the different ideas around what's going on a certain project, but we dive in with them, really talk to them, get what those thorough points are, and just start weaving and telling a story from there. The interesting part is, of course, we have AI now that is creating a big bump that's a great though, right? It's how you harness that tool. And so we can input all that data in a prompt through AI and get back even more information and select and choose what's best for the audience from there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And on the opposite end as well, you also thrive on large scale data driven web projects like the Phoenix Sky Harbor site. How do you approach structuring content for massive websites so that it's intuitive for both users and editors?
Yeah, so something with Sky Harbor's website, I really sit there and we look at the current site that they have before we actually touch the project, and we look at all the different categories they have. And then we also break it out into different users that might be visiting the website. So, what does traveler A look like? Might be a mom of four kids who's just trying to get through the airport as quickly as possible. And then you might have traveler B, who is a business person who might be interested in stopping by the restaurant or bar beforehand. So, really consolidating all that data and taking like a restaurant, for instance, and reviewing it and saying, okay, what are all the fields that are necessary for this? On top of having a good user experience on the front end of the website, something that I find really interesting is making the content management systems easy to use. So we want to add all that data in separate fields in the CMS so that the content user is not just adding a bunch of information into a singular text field. So that might be obviously restaurant name, what's the pricing range, what are the hours, all separate. And then on top of being able to display those on the front end of the site, you can change them so that they're in a schema for SEO type stuff so that the user, the common user might not know how to format those properly, but they know that data and get it onto the site properly.
So Riester is known for combining creativity with mission-driven work. And I was curious, how does your team bridge strategy and storytelling for clients that span maybe both activism and enterprise?
Yeah, so we really want to start with that core story that's happening and that message that they want to get out. And from that, we analyze the data and see how can we make this growth happen in a way that is more natural. So that might include just if there's a bunch of different locations for a certain project, we want to make sure that we're gathering all that data and then creating a story within each of those locations that align with the overarching story that's happening for them.
Okay, very interesting. Wow. I mean, I think there's a few organizations that are really like that, and it's more so like a big organization that is doing this thing as like a secondary piece. So it becomes interesting. So when you're designing user experiences, what do you prioritize first? Business goals, user journeys, or technical structure, and why?
I would say probably the user experience first because we want to make sure that a user knows how to get around the site before anything. And there's obviously a set of standards that most sites and people follow. So
Right.
we want to make sure everything's clear and concise. And then I'd say the business goals is probably a second. And
Okay.
then for me, I feel like the technical side, it just marries into all of that stuff properly. You can make adjustments to the technical side to make sure it fits both of those elements.
Yeah. That's and that's pretty standard across like no matter what the business goal is and whatnot, it has to follow that structure. That makes sense. Yeah. So, what advice would you give to clients who are revamping large content-heavy websites to ensure that they future-proof both the tech and the storytelling?
So it's interesting lately because we've obviously started transitioning to this headless type architecture, which is great because it is more data driven. You're going to be putting in sets of information into groupings instead of necessarily just having built out pages. So
Mm,
this is really helpful for content management. Now, if you have an old site that's got a lot of content, the hardest part is to analyze all that content, figure out which content is necessary, what's the bloat, do you keep some of it, do you not, right? And so we have a whole content team at Riester that goes through that process and that integrates both the brand, the storytelling that we want to go on, and then also SEO elements. And so from that, what I do is I make sure that we have all those buckets in the new CMS that are set up properly. So if I were to give a tip to people that are putting in a new system, I would say break it out into if you're not ready to go to a completely headless CMS, I would start implementing that strategy on the CMS side. So you might have a pages section, but then you're going to also have buckets outside of that are going to contain things such as products, or if you have call outs on the site that you know are going to be repeating, keep those separate so that if you do either transition to headless in the future, or do need to migrate that content, it's going to be separated out from the page content.
wow. Okay. Very technical. I love it. I know that just from the way you speak, how much that you just truly love what you do. That's awesome to hear, especially working on some big websites like we mentioned, Sky Harbor. That is not an easy website to do by any means, I imagine, right?
Yes, it's so funny because when you're talking about it in quick little snippets, it's so hard to articulate and really break it down. But for me, I think that what's so interesting about large enterprise level websites is it's like a giant puzzle, right?
Mhm.
And you've got all these pieces, you have the edges, you want to group those together, and then certain colors, right? And you want to make sure that they all come together properly. And it just takes a lot of strategy and thought, high level thought, and then also detailed thought to be able to put those together.
Absolutely. Kelsey, this was awesome, very informative. Where can people learn more about you? Where can people learn more about Riester?
Sure. Yeah. So Riester is just going to be Riester.com. That's Riester.com. But they're one of the larger Phoenix-based advertising agencies, and you can find all the information there, as well as on social. They have Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Myself, I really just have a LinkedIn profile right now. I have a lot of my projects on there and just some fun information that you can find on me there.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for being on. This is great.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. This was a fun experience.